Welcome to the main basketball rankings podcast. I'm your host, basketball data nerd Lucas McNally. My guest today is Jon Duke because there's a Celtics game on and there's Celtics news. And when there's Celtics stuff going on, we got to talk to Jon Duke. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, glad to be here. I love doing it. Love talking the Celtics stuff. And although I'm wearing my allegiances
Yep.
around me, you can see behind me, I'm ready to talk all things Celtics and everything else. It's
And
basketball time of year, and it's lovely, and we love it, and
it's
everyone's
great.
winning.
There's a minute left in the Celtics game, and I'm sweating a parlay. Jason Tatum just got a technical. There's all sorts of stuff going on. You
Dogs and
know,
cats living together, mass hysteria.
if this was a more professional podcast, we would have waited till the end of the Celtics game and then hit record. But instead, oh, there goes Pritchard. Pritchard, he's going to. Come on. So I needed two Peyton Pritchard points for my parlay, and he missed his last two shots of the game. And he didn't really shoot the ball much in the last 3 minutes. But I thought he would have a big game in Portland. Starting, he had only an okay game.
His folks were there. Abby interviewed him at halftime or whatever. So
I know. It's
I
a
know.
whole thing. Instead Sam Hauser went off. What are you gonna do? All right. So let's talk about the Celtics sale.
Yeah.
Because this is so convoluted.
Hmm.
Um I lost you for a second there. Okay, this is so convoluted, and I think we all thought Pags was going to get this,
Hmm.
and then no, it's this guy no one's ever heard of.
Bill Chisholm. Bill
Bill,
Chisholm is the man right now. Yeah.
who's Bill Chisholm? I don't even know who this guy is. I know a little bit because I've listened to like 4 podcasts about him and read like 3 articles, but other than that, he's a complete
Yeah.
mystery to me.
He's a mystery man. Yeah, private equity guy. Basically the place where all of our collective wealth in this country has gone over the last 30 years. I
Hmm.
won't get on that soapbox. That's the main wealth equity rankings podcast. So I'll save it for that. Uh, that's fine.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, he's a tech guy. He's a Massachusetts guy, so he's sort of born and bred as a Celtics fan. I caught like you said. I've been doing the podcast thing and listening to him, and you know he's saying all the right things when he's talking about one of his favorite memories is Leon Poe going coast to coast against the Lakers in the finals. There's those of us who know are like,
yeah.
okay, he's one
All
of us.
right. He's not
He's not
picking the
one of
basic
us.
stuff.
Right, right. He's
He's
not
not.
calling Leon Powell, so we're already ahead of the game.
He's not like I
Uh,
really like that Larry Bird. We're like, yeah, man, we know. We hope so.
when it came out that Wick bought the team back in '03, and we all found out that he was in a band called French Lick. We're like, oh, okay. Well, this is he's
Oh,
got
that's
the
something.
Celtics nerd qualities we can bite into, and let's just say just to sort of set the table for this, undoubtedly the Wick Groesbeck area has been a success.
Oh yeah.
One of the winningest teams of the last 20 years, constantly in conference finals over the last 10 years. Obviously, the 2 titles, but even to resurrect from the Paul Gaston era, there are people in their 20s, my kids, and a little bit older that don't know the dark times that you and I
Hmm.
grew up in the 90s when
Oh yeah.
Celtics were not in a great way, and thank goodness the Celtic City documentary is coming out, and then hopefully going to start to show that. But Wick turned that around. Wick is the guy who brought Danny Ainge in. I'm a Danny Ainge guy for life, so that turned everything. And
Hmm.
ever since that decision was made, and Wick bought the team, they've been on a great trajectory. Now his dad says we're selling the team. It goes up for auction after the winning the championship. And like you said, I figured the number 2 owner, Steve Pagliuca, was going to be the guy. And now it seems like, well, there's some maybe
Some
Wick kind of
tension.
way.
Yeah, it seems like they maybe weren't getting along so much at the end.
Yeah. And I go. Simmons kind of points to Bill Simmons kind of points to his potential interest in the Nets a few years ago, and that Wick didn't know that Hags had interest in that.
Hmm.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think a lot of inside of this, and probably more will come out in the next couple of weeks. The other thing to remember is the deal isn't done. So
Right.
until the deal was approved, I mean, the Timberwolves went for sale for a long time. They finally found a buyer in Mark Lore and A-Rod, which
Hmm.
just seems weird to say. And that worked its way through the courts. And now it
Who
seems like that's going to land. But that's been a couple of years at this point.
who could have guessed that A-Rod would struggle in the clutch? You know, when the chips were all on the table, who
You know,
could have
I would
possibly imagined?
you got to put your chips in on the guy who has a Minotaur style painting over their bed with themselves as the top head. If you don't know what I'm talking about, folks,
Yeah, oh
look it
yeah.
up. Just it's crazy, but that's the A Rod experience, right? Yeah, yeah. So I don't know. I mean, my sense is Chisholm will close on this, and then the other weird part for those who haven't followed is there's a purchase now, and then there's a
Hmm.
purchase again in 2028 when Wick's term as governor will end. Um,
Yeah.
so Chisholm will be the majority owner for like 3 years, but not be able to really run the team as governor until 28, and then Wick gets another 1.2 billion in the process. So
It's a good
it's a
deal.
weird stuff, but yeah, my thing's continuity, Lucas. I mean,
Yeah.
I just see this team. We'll see Brad Stevens, Joe Mazzulla, Jason Tatum. After that, I don't know what happens with the salaries because that's the tough part for the new owner coming
Yeah.
in.
My hope is that they saw how the Cuban thing went and said, "Oh, well that didn't work great, so let's get this in writing." And maybe this guy is smart enough. I was listening to one of the Ringer NBA podcasts, and like maybe this guy is just smart enough to realize, "Hey, Wick seems to know what he's doing." And I would be stupid to not pick his brain for as long as I could get away with before taking over because so here's my best case scenario. You're from Massachusetts, you're a diehard Celtics fan, and you made a ton of money doing whatever it is these people do. Stealing from grandmothers, whatever. Um, and so, defrauding people, Bitcoin, pumping stumps, whatever it is. I don't know how rich people get money. If I knew how rich people had money, I'd be wearing different clothes on this podcast and I'd have a much better microphone and I wouldn't have to go to a day job tomorrow. So my hope is that super rich guy, diehard Celtics fan, all of a sudden the Celtics are for sale. And who could have imagined that? Because no one thought that was going to happen for the foreseeable future. And so he's like, this is my chance. This is my thing that I've never even let myself believe would happen. And I'm going to jump in. And then the thing that encourages me is that this man is 54 years old and apparently sends hype videos before every game to his wife and children, which I don't do that. Do you do that?
I wouldn't date. I mean, my kids, yes,
Would
definitely not
Will
my
would
wife.
Will appreciate that?
He would not, and they're so tired of hearing "In the Air Tonight" by Phil Collins because quick story, we're driving through Boston during game 6 of the Miami Heat Celtics Eastern Conference Finals a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to a soccer tournament. This is when Will's last year playing soccer. We're driving to the South Shore. We're driving by the garden, and I am playing on a loop because you drive through Boston. It's not like 5 minutes, like the
No.
actual extended. You got to hit repeat on that boy.
Mm-hmm.
So we're cranking it, and we're boosting it to 11 over and over and over again. And my wife, saintly woman that she is, she just had enough of the Phil Collins. I couldn't even play Susudio after that. It wouldn't have mattered.
I mean, she's more into the basketball than my wife is. My wife, if I sent her a hype video about the Celtics, she'd be like, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And she already thinks there's things wrong with me. If I go tell her, "Hey, Peyton Pritchard I needed 2 more points for my parlay," she's like, "I don't know who that is. I don't care. How much money did you just lose?" It'd be
It's it's
like $1. Oh, so, okay, whatever.
and you're gonna send her the hype video.
Yeah.
It doesn't
No,
work. It
no,
just doesn't work. No.
no. So that makes me think that this guy is like a level 11
Hmm.
super fan, may potentially, or he's completely full of it. Those are the two
Yeah.
options.
Those can kind of go two ways, right? You've got
Right.
the Matt Ishbias over in Phoenix who are like, we're going to fix it tomorrow and spend a bunch of money, and look at that disaster, right?
That's going really well. Yeah.
Right, right. So you're right. Maybe we sort of once again sort of thread the needle on this as Celtics fans. We got the guy who really cares deeply, but is willing to listen and think. He doesn't seem like an irrational person. I haven't those
Right.
stories haven't come out. We haven't seen the Dan Shaughnessy Shank article that's going to just totally put this guy to
Yeah.
shreds. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but I would also say like that Pags Wick sort of relationship that ran the Celtics for so long. It concerns me that it went awry,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm hoping that this isn't another relationship where it doesn't come together, because
Mm.
those two really have to work hand in glove for the next 3 years. And oh, by the way, you're going to have a $500 million salary, including the taxes that they'll have. You're going to have all these issues to confront, and if they're not united, it could be a really, really difficult thing. We got people already saying this is the last year Jalen's on the team. I don't necessarily believe,
Yeah, I don't buy that.
but
I mean,
they're gonna have to shed salary soon. I mean,
yeah,
if it's not this year, it's after this year, it's after next that they're gonna have to seriously start paring back where they are.
yeah. It'll be. I think at first it'll be like Drew and like Hauser and people like that. The salaries that will go. Porzingis maybe, if they can get a younger big who they can count on to play the whole season, stuff like that before they go after Jalen and Jason. I just think, and I wonder if Wick. They said we're gonna go and get the biggest number we can get, but I don't know that if someone had come in with more that like 6.5, let's say, as the initial number, and they're like, yeah, I don't really care about basketball. I feel like Wick would have been like, no, he would have probably found a reason
Yeah.
to not find this number credible. That's my hope.
Right, and remember, so this is the weird thing about this is that it's Wick's dad, Irv Grossbeck, who actually had the money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's the one who wants to settle his estate and get, he's 90 something years old, wants to get all things settled before he passes and get his estate in order.
Which makes sense.
Great. Wick would do this for the rest of his life, right? And
Oh,
this is his
100%.
calling, right? So he already didn't want to sell it, but as the managing partner, he has some sway in this. And so, the argument of saying, well, if you're going to put a bid in and you can keep Wick involved for those next 3-4 years, Wick's going to feel awfully favorable towards that bid, as opposed to,
Yeah.
let's say Pags is like, no, you're out day one, brother. It's not going to go anywhere. And I think
Yeah.
Wick has enough sway in that, even though he's not the final decider in this, to be able to to make his dad kind of say, well, look, we're getting the top amount, and I get happy, I get to stay where I am. That's a win-win, and I think that's probably why they prevailed.
He can put his thumb on the scale a little bit here.
Yeah,
It's not like he's taken 4 from this guy.
yeah,
It's
well,
a good
just
it's a good
four,
number. Yeah,
just
4 billion.
four. I mean, I will say I was surprised that they got this much without that they set a record and they don't have an arena.
Yeah.
There isn't an arena plan with it, because I thought if they're going to spend this much, it's going to be, it's going to be oil money, it's going to be gambling money, it's going to be something that they're going to pair this up and they're going to turn into a second arena, and it's a play on a bigger scale. The
Mm-hmm.
fact that it's just the team for a record in North America is completely that's the shocking part to me.
Well, the lease goes through 30 something, right? With the Garden.
Yeah,
So, I mean, he's 54. He's got to think he's got a 30-year run in him doing this.
mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'm assuming his plan is a stadium.
I would think so. It's is Boston a two stadium city? That I think that's the question that
Well,
they
3-stadium city.
ask. Well, and here's the other thing that doesn't get talked about. Well, what about the WNBA?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that there's a real desire in the Northeast and in New England to see a WNBA team in Boston.
In Boston as opposed to just in Connecticut.
as opposed to Connecticut, which kind of is neither here nor there.
Hmm.
I mean, they sold out. I mean, everyone sold out when Caitlin Clark shows up, but they sold out in an instant when they moved the game, the Sun game, up to the Garden, and that's another piece of this that hasn't been discussed. So,
Yeah, green and
uh,
gold WNBA team would be pretty cool.
yeah, it would. So I don't know where how that plays in. I haven't heard a lot of talk about that, but to me, that's a there are places to grow this pie for Chisholm that haven't been explored, and I think he can do quite well with it because, like you said, he seems to have a passion for this. That's not just a plaything for him. This is his Celtics. I grew up listening to Johnny Most. I'm like, yeah, me too. I did too. I know that. I know the whole thing. It's so. I'm very optimistic with this Chisholm news. Um, but we've seen the vast majority of the time the Celtics have operated, they've had bad ownership.
Yeah,
They've had
yeah.
Red Auerbach has been, was like he kept them away from that. The Celtic City documentary is a really good example of showing that. They talk more about in the last episode, but other than Walter Brown and Wick Grossbeck, it hasn't been a great group of owners. So um, we've been lucky in the last 20 years, and I'm hoping it continues.
Let's talk Celtic City documentary because you are the world's biggest Bill Simmons fan, as everyone knows. But despite his involvement, um, what's
Ugh.
your what's your take on it so far? Now I'm only 2 episodes in, so no spoilers. Don't tell me if they won any titles or anything like that because I don't want it spoiled. I am caught up on Severance. I'm
Hold on.
completely caught up on Severance, but I'm not. Yeah, cover that up. I don't want to know.
86. Oh, that's episode 4. I don't want to show you episode 4. Hold on.
Yeah, I haven't seen episode. I've only seen the first 2. I hear this Bill Russell guy is pretty good, and I know
Yeah.
that Bob Cousy doesn't do drugs. These are the 2 big takeaways I had. But it looks like I was really impressed with the first 2 episodes.
Yeah. I loved it. I mean, like you said, I have Simmons. People have to understand. I mean, he's done a number of great things. If you pay, to me, I pay close enough attention that the act is a little more tired for me than it is for some. I'll
Hmm.
understand that for the casual fan that they're maybe, or I don't know, just not a fan. He and we had a whole issue thing there. I'll go into that later on. Um, Salt Lake City, though, uh, and that's actually episode 3. It does become more about Bill and what Bill wants, and Bill's dad's in it. And
Sure.
anyway, but no, episodes 1 and 2 in particular, I think you had in episodes 1 and 2, and I think we're going to see here in 4 and 5 in particular. You may see some of the last interviews ever done. Jerry West, you know, JoJo White, Bill Russell. I mean, but definitely Jerry West was knowing this was going on and was being interviewed for this purpose. And then
Hmm.
of course he passed, not so long ago.
It's got to be one of the last Cousy interviews.
Yeah, right. I mean, how long? Right, Kuzi's, he's still with us, thank God. But there's so you're capturing a moment with these guys that they lived. This is their, this was their world. And even the Auerbach daughters, for goodness sakes. I mean, this is we're capturing a moment before it goes away. Before the light goes out,
Hmm.
and that's what I love about it. It's so much. It's about those guys talking about their story. Whether it's Russ, whether it's West, whether it's Satch Sanders. Great interview with Satch going into to Bill Russell's old club in Roxbury and walking around there. I mean, that was so cool. And I go was at episode 3 because it's starting about how Russ left. Now what?
Hmm.
Uh, it's it captures the soul to me of what the Celtics are and what those periods are. They do talk about the tough things. They do talk about race relations. They do talk about busing in the 70s. They do talk about, all the issues of why the relationship the Celtics have with the overall NBA is so challenged and why they're hated, honestly. And it shows why it's not necessarily fair,
Hmm.
but where people come about from that. Um, I'm biased as hell, and I think they've done amazing things for advancing the cause on a whole bunch of issues. But they're also a damn good basketball team, and it's been interesting at this point. Episode 3 ends, so now we're a third of the way through,
Hmm.
and now we're introduced to this guy from French Lick, Indiana. So
Oh,
just so episode 4 will be the start of the Bird era.
okay.
Uh, I've got goosebumps as I say this right now. So I'm like the flags driving around to an AAU practice, watching this stuff and just drinking it in. It's awesome.
It reminds me a little bit. So, like 20, gosh, yeah, 20 something years ago, I went with my college professor down to Selma and like Montgomery and places like that and interviewed a bunch of civil rights people that were like there and like whose houses got bombed and like who were in the Selma to Montgomery March and Reverend Shuttlesworth and people like that. And it was a lot of we don't know how much longer these people are going to be around. We don't know how many more times someone's going to be able to listen to them tell their stories, and I talked to John Lewis, but you knew he had some time left still. But some of them, I spent a lot of time with Reverend Getz, who was the white preacher who was like Rosa Parks's one of her best friends. And so he was right there the whole time. He was in the room when they decided MLK should be the spokesman, and he was just in the middle of it. The Klan bombed his house. He refused to do the stuff where it's the segregation stuff, where he refused to sit on the white side of the meetings or whatever. And it was just really cool to get to talk to all those people. But yeah, you knew there weren't going to be a whole lot more opportunities. And then the thing he told me once on a 3-hour bus ride, because he was with us for like the whole week. He goes, "Yeah, I was arrested more times in the gay rights struggle than I was in the civil rights struggle." And I was like, "Wow, that's interesting." And he was still getting arrested, and he was like 70. But it was
Wow.
just talking to those people, and you get a little bit of that with the Celtics documentary of what that time was like, and it was just a wild time. But the good news is it's all coming back, so we're gonna get to do it again.
Yeah. That well, and right. This is there's a lot of things right that are going on, and that's the other thing to bring it back to this is that like they have a lot of Jalen Brown, right? Everyone
Yeah,
knows Jalen is one of the most well spoken athletes on the planet right now.
and tying him to Russell was smart.
Exactly, right? Like he is those connections. Um, Jalen knows there's another game going on out there other than basketball,
Right.
and it's not much of a game. It's the real life that a lot of people are playing in. This third episode, they brought in some of those connections with JoJo White and Tatum. Actually,
Oh, okay.
Tatum's grandmother, I think, lived next door to the Whites or something like. So there's some relation there. The St. Louis connection kind of coming
Okay.
in. Yeah, no, you're right. We are sort of what's past is future, I guess. Again, and
Well, you
it's
get enough time that the people who lived it the first time aren't around anymore, and so you're like, oh, some idiot thinks, hey, this is a great idea. Let's do this.
yeah,
Why didn't it
right,
work last time? We could do it better.
yeah, right. Fascism 2.0,
Yay!
big boogaloo.
All
No, you're
right,
right. But moving to the Celtics, the
moving
Celtics,
to
like
moving to the
I
Celtics.
know that I know they're going to get into Reggie Lewis.
Oh
They're going to
yeah,
they're going to talk about Len Bias. I mean, and again, those are things in the Len Bias issue. I mean, anybody who's our age who experienced that, everyone thought the moment you touch cocaine, you're going to die because that was the way that story went. Just say no, and there was like this whole thing of the '80s and how that sort of permeated in the culture. The Celtics they're a reflection of what's going on around us um, and what the way the world has been, over the last 70 years, 80 years. So I'm excited to see where this thing lands. I'd like a little less Bill Simmons than I saw in episode 3. I know that your dad had season tickets. I get it, but show me more about John Havlicek. Show me
Yeah.
more about Dave Cowens. Show me more about Silas. Like those stories, are really what are drawing us in, and I'm yeah, and that's what was so great about episodes 1 and 2. So
And
let's
just to see the Kuzi highlights was
oh,
awesome.
oh,
Some of those passes, you're like, oh wow, okay, I've seen it before, and then you just every time you
right.
see it, you go, yeah, that was something.
Well, and they make and you, I mean, this because you watch, but people make fun of him because all of his ball handling is on top of the ball. Like it looks like he's like sort of a third grader, bouncing the ball
Mm-hmm.
like this. But if you got on the side, you couldn't do that, right? So,
Yeah, it was a
so this
carry.
this was a legal trap. This was legal dribbling back then, and he was still able to handle the ball, obviously better than anybody else. Unfortunately, it's the JJ Redick, plumbers and whatever that they said, but
I
he
mean, they
changed it
say he
all.
invented the behind the back dribble in a game. That's the legend. That he was the guy who was guarding him so tight, and he's like, I didn't know where else to put the ball.
I mean, he's I that's the thing for me is I hope some of these guys get their due, and he's one that has not gotten his due. He was Mr. NBA the first 10 years of the league. Not Mikan, Kuz, but
Kuz.
yeah, it's exciting. I'm loving the show. I hope I'm sort of sharing my don't listen Time Warner or whoever, but whoever they got bought out by, share my password with everybody I can to be able to check it out. It's so great. So.
Cool. All right, let's pivot to this year's team. How are we feeling?
I'm super. I was a little nervous
Mm-hmm.
early February, late January, um, because I wasn't sure that they would be able to get people back and sort of find their grooves again.
Right.
Um, and I'd say the last 2 weeks in particular, from Porzingis coming back from his
Whatever that
bubonic
was.
plague. I, Black Death. I don't know what he got, but it was not good. Um, and then Drew, those two seem to have come back to a lot closer to what they were last year, or better in some cases. Porzingis,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and then you take the natural growth that we're getting from guys like even Baylor Shireman, or I mean, obviously, we talked about Pritchard. Pritchard has been probably sixth man of the year this year.
Hopefully, yeah.
So I think they're in a good spot right now. Cleveland's lost a number of games in a row. So that was, to me, it's OKC, Cleveland, and it's going to be us. There's three teams that are in the mix, and I think having been there and done it will benefit the Celtics in the long run.
Yeah, I sort of just think I look at OKC and I go, yeah, they're really good, but can they do 4 rounds of it? And I look at Cleveland and I go, they're really good. Can they do 3 rounds of it? And I'm not the world's biggest NBA historian, but there's not a lot of situations where a team went and did it all 4 of them on the first shot,
Right.
or the second shot. Usually you have to do it in stages. And so Denver worries me a little bit, and the Lakers worry me a little bit because of the whole Luca thing and Luca trying. But I also am not super worried about Luca in a playoff series. I am worried about LeBron in a playoff series because he just turns into Superman for like 2 weeks, and I can see Luca.
It's the
I can
hand
see,
reaching out of the grave, It's
yeah, I could see Luca carrying them to the finals and then LeBron taking over. I could see that.
yeah,
And I can
yeah.
see the NBA being very happy with that, and us getting Tony Brothers 6 times.
Well,
You
I don't know
know?
if you. Yeah, it could very well happen. There's Scott Foster actually has been injured, and so there's a
Oh, is
chance
he?
he may be out for extended period. Which he's the guy that usually regulates these things. So who the
Yeah,
hell knows where that goes? But
they'll be
uh,
lost without him.
they will be. They will be. I no, I hear you. Like I think yeah, the KG podcast with he does with Paul Pierce, they like to talk about the narrative, which is their
Hmm.
way of saying that the league is scripted, but without saying the league is scripted.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I believe in that. I believe there is like there's a story that the league wants to tell, and if it just so happens to work out that way, then wouldn't we all be happier in the end? I don't think they necessarily tell the officials how to call the game, but let's um, just it kind of works out that way sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes the players are too good for that to work, and sometimes
That's
they
right.
aren't.
That's right, and sometimes they aren't. And I think I think the narrative is still the Celtics are the best story for them to sell as a league. But it'd be nice to have an OKC, a scrappy underdog. But is there anything there they can sell beyond scrappy underdog? Shane Gilgeous-Alexander is a phenomenal talent. I'm not sure it brings in the eyeballs as much as Boston, LA.
Oh yeah,
Right,
they would kill for that.
right. Cleveland, OKC, I'm all set. So yes, they got their money from the TV deal. That's sort of done and paid for. But I've got to believe that if I'm NBC, Peacock, Amazon, whoever else is in that next deal, you want to see Boston, LA, and you want to have them kick off that next level in their new contract starting next fall.
Yeah. So speaking of a narrative that they're going to love to push going forward, Cooper Flag is having a hell of a tournament, and
I'm sorry,
and
not familiar.
yeah, so he's like about yay high and yay high, and he has brownish blonde hair, and he's from this town with no professional sports team up in the Northeast somewhere. Maybe he plays for Duke, and he plays bingo.
That's right. Yes, he won bingo. That's right. Yeah,
He's quite
he's
the
a good,
bingo player.
good sport about it. Good sport
Yeah,
about it. He plays with his grandma. Um, yeah.
I kind of love that commercial. Actually, I'm not sick of it yet. I'm gonna be sick of it because they're playing it every other commercial break.
yeah.
Like, do they
No.
not have any more commercials? Like, come on.
Yeah. It feels like, and I'm not. I there's a mutual acquaintance of ours that is in the ad game on
Hmm.
Twitter, on the X or whatever we call it. I'd love to know how much it would cost to produce an additional spot or keep doing additional spots and
Yeah.
just have a bigger rotation for the same ad buy. I don't know how that works. I'd love to know more about that, but it's a great spot for him. It's great at highlighting kind of his image and who I think people think he is, and what his sort of introduction to the mass culture that we all live in. Um,
Hmm.
he's also a damn good basketball player. Oh, by the way,
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe they'll have a new
he
spot for the next round.
what's that? Sorry.
Maybe they'll have a new spot for the next round.
That's what they should do. Every weekend, have a different spot, right? And
Yeah.
then the Final Four is a different one, and yeah, no, that would. How hard is that?
That can't be that hard.
It can't be. What do we know? We're a podcast. Again, if we were the people that made the money, like Bill Chisholm, we would not
Yeah.
be here, I guess. So,
I'd have shot like 5 different Cooper in Newport or wherever they shot it commercials. I mean, I know they shot it up there somewhere. I don't know if it
mhm.
was Newport exactly, but um I know some people on Facebook have been pointing out the extras and they're all local people. They're
Oh,
all
nice.
like central-ish Maine, so I know they shot it up there somewhere. I just
That's
don't
awesome.
know. I mean, it might have been in Gardner, it might have been in Fairfield, who knows. Wherever they got the right looking bingo hall.
It did. Oh yeah, they hit it. They hit it. They hit Central Maine to a T for sure. Yeah.
But I think that commercial was really well done. I think he's good in it. I mean, I wouldn't cast him in a feature film right now, but I mean, he can hold his own in a commercial, and he doesn't look. He does. He's a lot better than Chet Holmgren is in any of Chet Holmgren's commercials. That's for sure. Because Chet Holmgren sucks as an actor. He's abysmal.
We had this. We were
And
talking about.
Cooper at least holds his own. He's charming.
Yeah.
It's cute.
Yeah. No. It is. It is. Yeah. No. We were talking about that today. Will was saying like he's like, isn't it funny like that? I'm like, I do not. The
It's
singing commercial from last year totally turned me off on all of those guys. And then this
yeah,
is
it was
I'm
terrible.
not. I'm done. I'm out. I'm just yeah.
And that's
So
not their fault, but you have to think that someone in Cooper's circle went, "Hey, we should shoot it in Maine with real Mainers because that's the brand."
mhm.
And you know, that's the brand. And it's hard to fake that because when people try to fake it, as we all know, they don't do it. You
Mm-mm.
can tell when it's shot in Massachusetts. You can tell when it's shot in upstate New York. And you can tell when the accents are wrong.
Is this when I get on my soapbox about the fact that the Andre movie was filmed on the West Coast and didn't
Yes.
even use a harbor seal? Is this my
Wait,
time to get off the
go
chest?
which Andre movie?
The Andre movie. Disney did an Andre movie and they made it on the West Coast and they didn't even use
Okay.
a harbor seal. They used like a I don't know, not a harbor seal. That's a big
Okay.
deal for Rockport people. You know what I'm
Okay.
talking about here. Anyway,
I'm still mad at Michael Caine
Paul
for winning an
Cooper got
Oscar
that
for doing.
main deal.
I'm still mad at Michael Caine for winning an Oscar for not doing a Maine accent, and then thanking his accent coach for helping him dial it in. And I'm like, it's the wrong accent.
You princes of Maine, you kings of New England, right?
Jesus.
That was the line.
Yeah. When we were prepping my film that is called Maine Noir, someone was like, you should shoot it in Massachusetts because it'll be cheaper. And I said, you can go to hell.
That's a good way.
Absolutely not.
That's a good way to get fired right there.
I don't care how much cheaper it is. I'm not shooting it in Massachusetts. There's
Right,
no way on God's green earth.
right, right.
So,
And just to bring the Cooper thing back in, right?
yeah.
So like that's the thing about this for all those of us. Okay, so like there's the conversation you or I having about a podcast talking about basketball and the hottest number one player who plays for the best team across the country. It's the NCAA bracket. Like there's a whole bunch of reasons we should talk about this. But that gym that's behind you on the green screen, but sort of behind you,
Yeah.
that kid played there
Yeah.
3 years ago.
Recently.
Recently he played in that gym. He kicked teams that I coached that coached for my son. He kicked their ass. you know, and there are kids and there are coaches all across the state that all have those relations with this guy and his
Mm-hmm.
family.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that's just so mind blowing. In you'd always look at that chart, the sort of the infographic of like who's the best player to ever play in all these states.
Yeah.
It was like Jeff Turner. I'm like, I don't even like really was he even?
He didn't even play here. I don't think he played.
Yeah. And then there was the whole thing about whether at Duncan Robinson, but he's ours. Like, and he
Yeah.
puts his arms around that. Like he is Maine. He played for Maine United. Like his brother's gonna go play at University of Maine, and like
He
that
didn't
is
just bounce and he's like, oh,
right.
yeah, I'm from there, but whatever. I couldn't wait to leave.
Right. Like that's like forget about how good he is. Like eternal respect to him, his family, who have just said like it's easy to be like, look, I got to grab the brass ring, and who would blame anybody for wanting to be the number one pick and being like, okay,
Yeah.
well, it's cool, I live there, but he has brought the whole state along for the ride with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
And even though he went to Montverde and played there for 2 years and then went to Duke and whatever, and he could have just stayed at Nokomis for 3 years and no one would have blamed him and he would have won 3 titles and that would have been cool. But the best thing for his career was Montverde. But to stay with Maine United and to play with all his friends, which he didn't have to do, and to come back and do whatever that game was called, where they did the 2 exhibition games,
yeah,
and to come back and do commercials in Maine, and for his brother to be going to UMaine, which is I think the smartest branding move on the board for Ace.
mm-hmm,
I'll say that all day long.
mm-hmm,
Um, is awesome, and it's to really embrace that this is where I'm from. And no, there aren't a lot of NBA players from Maine. In fact, there aren't any at all. But I'm gonna be the one, and I'm gonna be the guy, and I now have the main man, the main attraction, whatever that those nicknames are. Those are mine now.
mm-hmm.
I like Dira Goat. I like Dira Goat is the best one I've heard.
Make this print the shirts now. Get them
I know.
outside
So
the garden for the first. Yeah, it's yeah. I can't say enough, and like I said, it's funny like being a youth coach, right? and you're like sixth grade, and you're like, okay, well, we're gonna play this team from Nokomis, and we'll see how this is gonna go, and blah 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 blah, and yeah, there's always good kids, right? There's always like there the MGBL started off this past week in the spring, and there's great
Hmm.
kids. There's kids on Instagram, and there's kids getting this and that and all that. Um, and you root for those kids, like you want those kids to do well and whatever. But it's such a long journey, right? There are kids who are phenomenal sixth grade players, and they aren't even playing this sport in ninth grade because it's just how the world works, right?
Yeah.
And to go from like a kid who is a fourth grader is playing sixth graders in the situation when they played us back in the day to now, not only that, but like to see that kid go on and his folks and his teammates. I mean, you see all of his Nokomis teammates are sitting with his parents and everything. Like it's just such a cool thing for the state. And the way the family and the way Cooper and Ace and those guys have handled it, you can't say enough about it. And you want them to go out there and kill. I mean, I obviously want Duke to win the national championship for sure, but
Yeah.
it's such a big thing for the whole state, and it opens doors, right? It opened doors for all
Hmm.
those kids who play with them, Maine United, but I think it also opens a door for all these younger kids. Like, okay, there's a path here that's more than just, maybe Maine will look at me. There's a bigger world out there that Cooper opened up for a lot of kids in this state, and it's an amazing feat for one guy and his brother.
Well, and his brother. And if you look at, say, a kid like Quinn Pelletier, right,
Mhm.
who's an eighth grader and had the 43 points and the whole thing, the ceiling for him suddenly seems higher. And I'm not saying he's going to be a lottery pick in the NBA draft because I haven't even seen the kid play, and who knows. But the ceiling does feel higher for a kid like that than it was 5 years ago. And also, it's probably something that he can look at and go, okay, a kid from Maine did that.
Mhm.
Whereas before, that wasn't a thing.
Well, and right, and look at the path, right? So Cooper gets coached by his mom. His mom gets an AAU team together. The Andy Bedard coaches up, who's done as much outside in the game of basketball in the last 30 years as anybody in the state. Made a
Right.
name for himself. Obviously torched the guys who play in that gym in a state game. Uh, we all remember it all too well. But
I've watched it a couple times.
uh, I watch it for the jokes and to see who's in the crowd. But anyway, it's
Yeah,
too painful to
sure.
watch what happens on the floor. But it's about paying it forward. And Andy and obviously Kelly went through what she did at UMaine. Andy went through what he did working at UMaine and BC. Put those connections together. Matt McKenzie, and the training they've done. Matt got connected with Scal, and it just those connections. Now there's a pathway. Now there's a way for a kid from Madawaska, of all places, to connect
Hmm.
through into a bigger ecosystem basketball that would have been unheard of 10 years ago. And then we
Yeah,
certainly have kids who went D1. Don't get me wrong. I mean,
right.
we've had those guys who have gone and done well, and it's phenomenal. But there's going to be a different look because you're not going to look at, well, who's going to play for me? Oh, well, the guy just went number one in the draft last year.
So
That guy's
maybe,
for me.
yeah. It's like, I mean, look how France is like been revitalized with like Tony Parker and then now Wemby all these years
Right.
later.
You have to
And
see
Bedard,
someone do it ahead of you in a way before you can do it yourself.
right.
I think there's some truth to that.
Yeah, and Bedard is another guy who could have gone away and just never come back and only come back for Christmas, but he's stayed, I think he lives in Florida maybe, but he has stayed connected to Maine in a way that a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
And he deserves a lot of credit for that because he didn't have to do that. He could have just
That's
gone to Florida or whatever and done what he's doing and been like, yeah, I'm from Maine, but it's all
Yeah, no,
plumbers and carpenters there.
no, I no, you're totally right. It takes a lot of people to do that, and I think that's I know we're going to talk about Wyndham. We're going to talk about what's going on right now in high school too, but
Hmm.
like it takes it takes a village. It takes a village of these people at the high school level, at the statewide level. who are the best that we've come up with in Maine? Okay, we get the best kids who are coming up. Let's connect those people together. Let's make sure we're getting, Andy's son Caden was in that group that played with Cooper, but they were also part of that Blue Wave team when they were starting out as an AAU program. Like there were connections there that were made, and and that's the beautiful part about this is there's so many people I think are selflessly just want what's best for the kid, the state, the
Mm-hmm.
program. They're thinking globally. They're thinking bigger than themselves, and that's the type of thinking. AAU gets a lot of flack for like it's all about one person, it's all about this and that. But there are a lot of operators and people working, I think, in that area right now. They're just trying to improve the game, and I
Yeah.
think that's a really important thing in our state right now because there are a lot of kids who are putting time in and putting money in, and families putting money into that. But there are so many people who are spending their Saturdays and Sundays collecting dollars at a door so they can play, at Gilman Street in Waterville or, XL down at Saco or whoever it is, just to see the program work and just to see it work
Mm-hmm.
for our kids in the state. And that's a pretty cool thing.
I think Maine, more so than most states, has well, the kid's from Maine, so that's all I need to hear. As opposed to like, when I lived in Pittsburgh, I don't remember hearing about it. I wasn't as tuned in to the high school sports as I am now, but I don't remember hearing that when I lived in Pittsburgh, and I don't remember hearing that anywhere I went, really. But it's like, how far is Madawaska? Like, that's really far. You know,
Yeah.
in most states, they'd be like, that's all the way over there. I don't care about that kid. We're all like, Madawaska, holy cow. Quinn Pelletier, man. This is awesome. My nephew played against him at Harbor House, and he was pumped
Mm.
to play against Quinn Pelletier at Harbor House. And I was like, are you going to shut him down? He's like, no, absolutely not.
Oh, no,
He's like,
no.
I have no chance. But he was
Camden was
excited to play against him.
Madawaska, on the high school side, Madawaska was in Camden's bracket, and
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to my buddy Mike, who's Nolan Ames' dad, and he's like, "No, thank God, Quinn's playing with the middle schoolers," and I'm like,
You, you
I
know who
mean,
wasn't
he
happy
needs to
about that?
be.
The middle schoolers.
I don't, we don't need that smoke, but that's that whole eighth graders playing high school thing that happens. It's
Yeah.
a strange thing, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, he's got real potential, and that's the fun part of this is we all get to kind of sit back, and I don't think we try to put pressure on these kids. At least I think most coaches, parents, I don't think that that's what it's about. It's just let's see them do well and see what happens.
Hope for the
I
best.
really we're still there right now as a state. I think it
Yeah.
hasn't crossed over that bridge of like, well, you only averaged 15 instead of 18.
You're not going to make the lottery with those numbers. You got to pump those numbers up.
Right, exactly.
You're
Yeah,
not going to get into Duke.
failure.
Yeah. We're just like thrilled. We're like, he got into Maine? That's awesome.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
made Farmington? Fantastic.
Well, and that's the thing that my eyes have been open to is the college scene this year.
Mm-hmm.
Going around, and we've got a lot of good coaches. We got a lot of good programs in the state that Maine kids should. I hope the coaches there are looking at Maine kids because I think they can play a lot of these places. But we'll see. It's. I think there's a lot of potential out there, and there's a lot of good, strong Maine high school athletes that want to play, but there's a level of devotion and work that goes with that. So
Mm-hmm.
I hope more guys get to go on to the next level. It's
Yeah.
exciting.
Hold on one second. My kid walked in the room. What you need, Reese? You're scared? You want to come say hi? You want to come say hi on the podcast? Okay.
Oh my gosh, that hat is awesome. I love that hat.
I know.
Are you a Mario guy or are you a Luigi? You like Mario more than Luigi?
I'm Mario.
What?
I'm Mario.
Mario time.
He's
Yeah,
Mario.
Hey, Mario.
oh, I love Mario. Love it. Love it. Oh my gosh. What do you play, Mario? What's your favorite game? What's your favorite Mario game?
What are you doing?
What is this? What?
I would choose to play
Odyssey?
Mario Odyssey. Yes.
That's what I thought. With the hat. You throw the hat.
Yeah,
I love that. Yeah, don't throw that.
All right, let's take this.
That's awesome.
All right, that's. I think you're supposed to be taking a bath, aren't you? Wow. All right, go find somebody else.
Go find somebody else. Oh, that's great.
Huh?
Joey's asleep.
Huh?
Zoe's asleep.
Zoe's asleep? Okay. Well, I'll be down in a few minutes, okay? All right. Say goodbye.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Okay, so we're going to pivot a little bit now to next season for high school. Okay, so I prepped you on this. You just going to hang out for the whole time and not be able to hear what's going on?
Mhm.
Okay. I prepped you on this. So I think, looking at Mr. Basketball next year, I think there's two candidates that jump out at me, and this is where someone goes, how dare you forget so-and-so from Class C North or wherever. And so I admit that I have forgotten someone from Class C North. But I think the two that jump out at me are Tyree James and Nolan Ames from Wyndham and Camden specifically. And you have a lot of familiarity with Nolan Ames, he has like sort of the normal path that we've seen the last couple of years to winning Mr. Basketball, which is to have the big year as a junior, have the big tournament run or the big performance in the tournament in front of on the big stage, and then you turn that into making the front runner. That's the Cash McClure model. But I want you to make the case for Tyree James, and you can put any qualifier in front of it that you want.
Oh, that seems you've got the Windjammer backdrop there.
Yeah.
You tee the whole thing up, and you just totally cut me out at the knees.
Yes.
Lucas.
Yes. So, but you can qualify it in any way that you want so that you don't get ostracized. Wow. You can be like, let's say Nolan Ames.
Adam Robinson.
I would absolutely do it to Adam Robinson. You could be like, let's say Nolan transfers to Montverde in the off season.
Chad Polkinen. That's what I want to see. I want to see you get Chad back on and have
him do the same thing.
That's right. Make the case that your player is.
I originally came up with this idea. I was going to have Mike Gray do it when Lizzie Gruber was the favorite.
Yeah.
And then it didn't occur to me until after the ceremony.
That's a tough time to do that.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that would have been good.
So let's pretend, Mike, that
that she's not the favorite.
Well, look, I mean, you want to talk about models.
Mm-hmm. What are you doing? Go
out of your shoulder, I think.
Yeah, go play video games.
So exactly. Have
kids, models. They said.
I know, right? It's so great. Mine's on the way to Auburn right now, so he can't bother me. So speaking of so models, right? So what's the model? Tyree James model. It's pretty simple. It's Pierce Walston, and what should have happened.
And Pierce Walston should have won it.
All due respect to Chance, who will be playing at SMCC, and there'll be some fun SMCC, CMCC games, and I don't, Chance is
the smoke
and deserves to win. But the fact that Pierce was not in that three was bizarre.
It was bizarre.
Yeah. So the model is Pierce Walston, and people feeling as though, the point guard who was a multi-time state championship winning player, who, was really a phenomenal player and somebody who, really runs that group, should be there. You can't ignore that. Gold balls don't lie, right?
They lost 3 straight when he was hurt.
Yeah. And that, honestly, that was the only reason I think people are looking at, could somebody else pull that out, whether it's Sopo or, Chevrolet or whomever. I think that he's got a real good chance. I think you're right. It is probably those two. Looking around the state, there's a lot of graduates. A lot of people are moving on to the next level. Mm-hmm. You look at that McDonald's game and you're thinking, okay, well, who's left? Okay, Tyree and Nolan. Okay, so let's see how that goes.
Yeah.
Now, Tyree's going to have to pick up a bit more of the scoring load this year coming in for Wyndham, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
With Grady Dixon going up the road,
That's a big
for my
loss.
kid. That should help him to get his numbers up a little bit more. Nolan is probably going to still be 20 plus, 25 plus. Already got his 1,000th point. All the really individual accolades.
1,000th point as a junior is huge for this, I
Yes.
think.
Yes. You know what's also funny is to have my son's college teammates sitting behind Nolan's dad asking, like with 2 minutes to go in that very tight game with Meso, hey, how many points away is he now? How about now? And good on Mike for not hitting those kids. But
They didn't have it up on the wall.
they deserved it. They
Yeah.
deserved it.
So the last couple people I've seen get 1,000, or some of them, they've had it up on the wall like the running tally, so people aren't just asking all day the whole time.
Well, it was sort of the thing, like you don't want to jinx it, right? And at the other
Right.
hand, also like he was so far away before the end of the season. It was like, well, if you're going to get there, it's either going to be at the end of a very tight semifinal game, or you're going to be in the regional final.
Oh,
If
right,
you're
because it was in the tourney game when he got it.
right, it
That's
was
different.
2 minutes to go in that tourney game, and
Oh,
so
yeah, you can't do it then.
no, and then conversely, so a couple of years ago, Brady Saunders got his 1,000th point playing against Camden in that very tight quarterfinal in that 1-8 game. And Camden was ahead in that game. They made a little bit of a charge. He gets a foul on Weston DeWard, our senior. He goes and shoots free throws. All the Camden fans are like, what's going on? All of a sudden, they go crazy over there on the Brewer side. We're like,
That
what's
happened with Izzy Morelli this year in the tournament.
throws everybody. The whole energy of the building shifts.
Yep.
And I mean, Brewer was really good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they were a phenomenal team, and Brady was amazing, and still is at USM. But certainly didn't hurt their chances. So
Right.
it was kind of like a weird thing. Like, what do you say? What do you do? And you don't want to jinx it at all. But it was very cool for him to get that 1,000 point. So all the individual accolades are done. Conference Player of the Year, first team, all defense for Nolan. It's all about getting that gold ball, and all doing so with reclassification. Now Camden is in Class A North, and Wyndham is in Class A South. So why
That
don't
could be
we just
fun.
settle this at the state title game? Let's just do
Well,
it.
the problem is they'll probably have already voted because
Right.
no one knows. And I talked to some people, and I don't want to out anybody, but I talked to the people who vote, and the impression I got was that the votes are done before the state championship game, and I have no idea why. You have a whole week. Like, it could be and I don't know why it's a vote and not like a discussion, like the NCAA committee. Like, I don't know why this isn't a Zoom call that you hold the day after the state championship games and you go, okay. And I don't know why the semifinal vote is as early as it is, because Davis Mann should have been a semifinalist. And I don't think anyone disputes that now. And he didn't make that semifinalist list because unless you were reading the newsletter, you were not aware of the numbers he was putting up early in the year. And then when he kept doing it, people go, oh my goodness, what is this?
And to give Davis credit, right? We played Falmouth a lot in the last couple of years. I didn't really know him a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
We played them the first day of fall ball. Actually, played Madomic and Falmouth back to back, which was fun.
That's a fun day, yeah.
That was a fun day. Yeah. A lot of guys missing. It was like Nolan and like a bunch of freshmen. It was like, okay.
Versus Gabe Lash and Davis Mann back to back. Yeah.
It was a tough start.
Yeah.
But, and like, who is this lefty who is just like throwing down? And Nolan's dad, Mike, because they play XLP together, and is like, oh, yeah, that's Davis Mann. He's a problem. I'm like, yep, yes, he is. I think Sam Smith would agree with that. That kid was unbelievable.
I think part of it was that they got knocked out in the first round last year. So we never got to see, and I don't remember how integral he was into that offense last year, but I can't imagine he was not starting. Then we would have seen him do something in the tournament where you go, oh, who is this kid?
Well, it's the thing that your maxim of like, you've got to have some success right before.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't disagree with it necessarily, but there is a part of it where there's a lot of a lot of team success is based upon help around you, right? And
Sure.
so, and this might work against Tyree in a way because he's had Creedy, who's with him, who's a great player, and I'm excited to see him play at CM next year. He's also got AJ Moody, who is going to be in his same class, and frankly, probably also has a claim to be a semifinalist and maybe
I
a
wouldn't
final.
be surprised at all if he's a semifinalist. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got two guys there who deserve attention and respect and praise. I don't know what you do. I'm glad I'm not a voter, but I
Yeah.
would say the MABC has a time between now and then to maybe talk about those timetables and maybe shift them.
Yeah. Let's streamline it a little bit.
I, I
This,
don't think it's fair. I don't think it should be a postseason award. Like, I don't think it's, oh, you played the best in the tournament, so then therefore blah 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 blah. Like, I don't think it should be that.
mm-hmm.
But when you look at the totality of what was last year, Davis Mann was in the newsletter a lot, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
because you like writing about Falmouth. It's because he was really good. He did really well against really good teams. His
Yep.
team was at the top or near the top with Noble the whole year. And all due respect to Bryce and Jameer, who had a phenomenal year as well, but they were in the mix. They deserved, Falmouth deserved that attention because Davis had such a phenomenal year. And, it's kind of ironic that if you think back, who are the two guys who you're going to remember about, or the boys players who remember the most out of this year? Davis Mann. And the year
Yep.
before that, Pierce Walston. Doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
who Mr. Basketball is. It's like those are the names that I'll be thinking about for the 25 tournament, or 24 tournament, those who will stick out to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a long season. It's an
Mm-hmm.
18 game season. And then, if you get 4 games in the playoffs, that's a pretty big chunk of the season
Mm-hmm.
to throw that out. And the playoffs your senior year, if it's a 4-year award, if you do something as a freshman, that's a bonus, really. It's like if you're a sixth man as a freshman, that's pretty good. And then if you do something as a sophomore, great. And then the junior and senior years are really the 2 big years where you win the award. So if you're not even gonna count the playoffs of the senior year, that's the most important stretch. Then what do you do? What are we doing? Like, it's not a postseason award, but it's also, you know, like, that's at least a third
Yeah.
of what should be a factor is the playoff run your senior year. If you don't make the playoffs your senior year, then you have no shot at Mr. Basketball.
Like, NBA MVP is a regular season award,
Right.
right? That's why the voting ends in the period that should include what you're considering for that award.
Mm-hmm.
If Mr. Basketball isn't, it's neither of those. There isn't any designation as to what it is, right? It's not part
Yeah.
of. So why, to that point, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. Why would you vote so early?
Yeah, why would you? If there's a way to do it, and talking about a handful of people, once you move past the semifinalist stage, why wouldn't you? And to me, wouldn't you want your semifinalist list to come from the best show of who potentially is on that list, which is the tournament? At least
I would
include that.
I would
You
think
know,
at least do the semifinalists if you don't want to move the award show because it's whole thing. The semifinalists should maybe be voted on after the regional final.
mm-hmm.
But I don't know if the MABC is nimble enough to pull that off. And I think maybe more importantly, are the people who vote nimble enough to get their votes in?
Yeah.
Because a lot of those coaches are just sort of really burned out at that point.
Yeah, that's true. And they sort of schedule that time between the end of the regular season and the start of the playoffs to sort of get some of that work out of the way, right? All their conference meetings are done between that. So I get that. And I can have more understanding with that list of semifinalists just because it's 10 and I don't know how they get there, but it would be nice if you could just, I believe it's a handful of people from what I think I've heard you say before that make that final decision. It'd be nice if they could do that after the state games because you do have that week until the McDonald's banquet to pull that off. It feels like that's possible.
I mean, they don't announce the Fitzy until like 3 months later.
That's true. Yeah.
Like, I don't know why it has to be that fast.
Yeah.
Like when does spring sports starts? Like not for another, like it feels like a month or whatever. I don't know exactly the date, but there's a lot of time between the end of basketball season and the start of spring sports. And then if the fields are all a mess, there's even more time.
Right. Right.
It
No,
seems
that's
like
true.
it seems like you got enough time to do this.
I would. So I don't want to get off on another tangent, and I know, like you mentioned on the last show with Adam, the NPA has a lot on their plate right now, so I'm not looking to add to that plate right now.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But but there's something to be said about the calendar, and
Mm-hmm.
you want to make a 3-sport world work for the NPA, and I certainly appreciate that. Um, but having gone through it with my kid and where that is and what that is, it does feel like the calendar could be tweaked, and you could maybe not have such rigid dates around. Okay, there's fall, there's winter, and there's spring.
Mm-hmm.
I know that might be difficult for the gym time or different things, but
Vacation.
you got baseball, you got kids. I mean, yeah, the snow's gone now here, but we don't have a turf field. Like it, I'm seeing New Hampshire still playing. Like I just feel like there's a way to sort of mix these seasons a little bit better.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen for everybody. If you're still playing, maybe but like you said, it's such a short season. And if we had a lot of snow outs and whatever, and you're playing four games in a week or something like that, what are you learning? What are you able to teach those kids? What are you able to get across as a program? Um, I know it's a long season, but it's also not a long season, really. These kids are playing AAU for 12 weeks, and they're playing like 5 games a weekend, without
Yeah.
a back of my eyelash. I'm not saying that's a great thing, but I'm just saying there's a lot, I think, that could be done to potentially extend what we're doing.
It's a long
I also
season for the
love
adults.
it. What's that?
It's a long season for the adults.
It's a long season for the coaches and the ads and the support staff. I get it, but it's it feels like there's those limits of time. Whether it's November, other schools, other states don't have the same restrictions about out of season contact, inside season contact,
Mm-hmm.
and you know we're we're handing over a lot of the development and the conversations with kids to AAU programs and trainers, which might be a good thing, might not be a good thing. Um, but it's also putting us in a situation where all that's for cost.
Yeah.
And, how do you balance those things? We started out talking about the flags who seemingly did it the right way. They tried to balance that high school, the whole thing. I'd like to see a little bit more in support, and also those good high school programs who can do more. And I'll tap I'll pat on the back, Nick DePatsy and Madomic here, since you're on Lucas, since I'm on your podcast, I should. They do a great job of running that program, youth program, everything else, and that's where I think where it's so successful. I mean, Wyndham has been successful because that's a program that everybody's involved with, and
Yeah.
what you saw with Pat Moody and what they did for as a group family, as a community coming together was, that's what community's about. That's the best part of basketball is being there for everyone.
100%.
So
Yeah, it's the whole community thing, and it's running into people in the grocery store, and it's the youth programs, and it's going to a random youth game, and there's like 50, 60 kids playing,
mhm.
like third and fourth graders, and you're like, wow, this is a lot of kids, and this is gonna get winnowed down to like 6
Yeah,
or 10 or whatever because of life. But
right.
it's great to have that base to pull from, and some of those kids go to different schools, and some of them play different sports, and some of them decide they're better at Mario Odyssey, and they all have different paths, and some of them turn into really good basketball players.
They do.
And
Yeah,
that's, and then even if they don't end up playing basketball, they end up at the games, and they end up yelling at the refs about over the back and
Over the
other
back.
rules that don't exist.
You're right. Yes. But, and it also, I always looked at it from the perspective when I was coaching with younger groups at younger ages. It's about sort of teaching the things about how life works, right? It's about working as a team. It's about hard work pays off. It's about all those sort of things that you do to grow up, right? And some of them are things that already are reinforcing what's in the classroom, but some of them aren't. Some of them are only things that you get playing on a team or playing, whatever. And there's different aspects to that. But you're right. It's one of the few times when you have everyone together and you can sort of all get that one message. And you're right. Like a lot of kids, they don't. They move on. They do their own thing. Maybe they play Mario Odyssey. Maybe not.
I mean, it's a lot of Mario Odyssey.
A lot of Mario Odyssey, but it's the community stuff and those kids, the ties that bind that sort of thing. Like there's a group of seniors that came in last year, and I had a number of them at the youth level, and you saw them when they were in fourth grade and fifth grade and sixth grade, and they go up through, and they're not gonna be Cooper Flag, they're not gonna go to Duke, but
Right.
what did they learn from it? What did they learn from playing? What do they learn from? They may not have been the star, they may not have been, but are they good people? Are they good members of society? Can they work with somebody, get something done? Like it. That's the cool part of it, because most of the people who we see on these hardwoods are not going to end up doing anything more with it.
Right.
But the cool thing is they go on to be the guy who's your banker or who your real estate agent or your principal at your school, and that's that's sort of the building the community part of it that doesn't get talked about a lot, and because it's not very fun to talk about, honestly, but
Right.
it's true. It's how it's what happens, and that's what kind of the fabric of Maine gets built by.
And even if they just learned not to punch someone when something didn't go their way, or something like that, even if they learned just to function in a little bit of adversity,
Life lessons.
there's a lot to be said for that. And there's a lot of people around town who didn't do that.
It's true. My sister is now a cop in Rockland, and
Oh, dear God.
there's a lot of people you wish they got life lessons on a basketball court, and you just have to. But
As someone who for a little while lived in an apartment between Trackside and the Myrtle Street Tavern, I can tell you that on Saturday night at 2:00 in the morning, all of those people are right there.
That's a time right there. You could have sold tickets over there, and with some of the shows you would have had.
Yeah, it was a lot.
That's pre Timeout Pub, right? That's before.
No, that's post. No, Timeout Pub was still there.
A lot. That's a lot.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
People don't understand the Mid Coast, but those. I mean, I know. Us Camden, Madomic, Oceanside people, we're all nodding our heads, being like, "Yep, I know what we're talking about."
Yeah, Myrtle Street Tavern. Oh yeah. All right, so I'm going to ask.
That's another podcast.
That's a whole different podcast. All right, so one question I've asked you this before, but I always end it with this: You're in charge of the MPA. You get dictator powers. You get to run your own Doge system inside the MPA. What are you going to do?
Well, you got okay. Well, so I don't know if you know this, but if you turn around behind you, the green screen, it doesn't help you. No, you can't see it. We bought the boosters at Cameron Hills. We bought 2 new scoreboards for that game. And there's one thing that those scoreboards can work well with, and that would be a shot clock.
Yeah.
And I realize I'm maybe like I'm pushing you off your own soapbox to
preaching to the choir.
This. But so since the last time I've been on the show here with you, so Will's team at CM, they go up and they play in Canada. They're like the start of their schedule. So my son went from playing no shot clock in high school, right? As we all know, right?
Sure.
And then you've got a shot clock at the college level. So he played one game at the college level in the state, played against Crandall University, who is from Moncton, New Brunswick. Then they went over to New Brunswick and played 3 games. New Brunswick, not only do they have a FIBA ball, which is totally bizarre, yeah,
Sure.
but they have a 24-second shot clock. So you've already lost, to 9 seconds right there, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it's a 7-second to get it over half court.
Oh, that's different.
That's different, right? So I've seen somebody going from the high school experience with no shot clock to, okay, not only do you have to do it within a period of time, but you have to do it even quicker on a moment's notice. So I've seen sort of like the control, and I've seen like the variable, right? If we're doing an experiment here.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's hard to start to like speed up the clock in your head. Like the first game was a disaster. It was like throwing the ball over the place and like, But by the second game, things settled in, and you have that clock in your head, or at least Will and his teammates did. And so they made that adjustment swift. And now CM isn't a team that runs like a ton of stuff. Like they've got their core that they run, but like honestly, it sharpens the mind. It sharpens the focus. And I thought when you had Troy on, Troy Barney's last year was like really like if you could have like clipped that and just sent that to the MPA. I just there's so much basketball, and I know you harp on the dribbling out the clock. I understand why teams do it. I don't have an issue with it because it's allowed and what you should do.
You're trying to win the game.
Right, trying to win the game. But there is it makes the game go so much shorter but longer. Right? Yeah. One possession for a minute, as opposed to if you have a 24-second shot clock, you got 3 possessions. No lead is safe. You could be, you're looking at the clock with like 3 minutes to go and you're down 8, and it's like, you could win this game pretty easily. If you're down 8 points with 3 minutes to go in a high school game, it might as well be over.
Especially a girls' game.
Right. So just hold it, pass it around. That's not what anybody wants. Like nobody, that's not the game. There's 29 minutes in a high school game that are alike, and then there's 3 that aren't.
Yeah.
And
because no one really does it the first quarter unless they're just being a jerk.
Right. You almost have to coach a different defense for the last 3 minutes of the game, or a different offense for the last 3 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
And to me, like, that's not what you want. You want to be able to coach for 32 minutes. It's 32 minutes. So I know I'm stealing your idea here, but I think it's the answer. Because you want kids to be ready for the next level, potentially, maybe, possibly. But it also allows coaches to, like, force kids to think about what's a good shot. Mm-hmm. And I see this over and over and over again at all levels, at all grade levels, whatever, but especially the high school level last year, just seeing that difference, going from, yes, the college level game, but to a high school level game, but not just at Camden, different gyms. Like, what's a good shot? What is a good shot? It's not just the shot that goes in. It's not just the shot that you can get off, but what is a good shot? Like, what makes you think that that's the time to pull the trigger? And some coaches really have discipline and can do that, but a lot don't. The shot clock can help all coaches to get that definition, I think.
I think it'll benefit the good coaches more because they'll be better at teaching that and teaching actual basketball as opposed to just standing around and dribbling around.
Exactly. Right. Like if you're a good coach for 29 minutes, but you can't coach the last 3 minutes of how to stall the ball or how to steal the ball in the last 3 minutes, you might lose more than you should. So
yeah,
I know that I'm stealing your idea here, but the more that I see at the college level, the more I think it's possible at the high school level. I think it's all a question of implementation.
Yeah,
and because the why nots are always about the implementation and why you can't implement it the way that's proposed. Well, we're gonna see team. I mean, there's a lot of problems all on a whole bunch of court. I mean, Cameron Hills is gonna play, Oxford Hills, who has like I don't know however many, and like Thornton Academy is gonna be in. They have 1,400 students, and we have 700, and like there's always equity issues. Like you're
But you
always
have Nolan Ames.
we do happen to have Nolan Ames. That does help, but it's he's a good kid, by the way. Those who don't know him, he's a good kid, and uh, he had a lot of responsibility early on when we didn't have a lot of help.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the story. Doesn't get everyone's looking at him now what he's doing now, but he was playing a lot as a sophomore and as a freshman, doing far more than he should have been expected to do in those situations, and did really well in that process. And so the
Even
Dukes are
earlier junior year, I saw him at the beginning of junior year and at the end, and I was like, oh well, this supporting cast is way better than it was at the beginning of the season.
yeah. That was the difference. Like you look at and I'm not going to get on. I know you've got your work, and I don't want to but like that's the problem with like the team that Cameron Hills was in the first 8 games of the season, basically before
Mm-hmm.
Christmas, after Christmas. And Coach Gabriel and I had this. I'm like, it's night and day, but
Yeah,
because they graduated 7 kids last year, and my kid and a whole bunch of them they leave, but almost all the kids who came in hadn't played a lick, hadn't played 1 minute. So it takes a second to be like, what is varsity basketball about? You can play in Coney League, you can play in fall ball, you can play at Harbor House, but until the bright lights are there, you don't know.
mm-hmm.
And just seeing how they compete against that Meso team there at the end, they're going to be a tough out next year. And, no one's, buying state finals tickets now, but, it's
Take it from me, you don't want to do that early.
right, right. Um, but Cameron Hills, I mean, last year was the first year we won a playoff game in Class A ever,
That's crazy.
ever. Both boys and girls. And then this is the first time any of the girls had been to a regional final in 20 years.
That's a crazy stat.
So, there was a lot of success over a 15-year period that Coach Hart and Jay Carlson had on the boys and girls side, but there's been a gap here. And
Yeah,
so there's been a huge youth program. And that's why I look at what Dominick's done and what Wyndham has done and all these youth programs. That's the secret sauce, right? All over the place that's helping these coaches get where they got to go. And we've got a great youth program who are just putting the time in, and young and coaches, and that's so now those guys could step in. Those guys playing with Nolan last year had skill in game one,
mm-hmm.
but they had confidence in that
Yeah.
in that game 20 when they played against Messi.
They weren't really sure what they were doing in game one.
Yeah,
They were like, what is all this?
right. And you know what? The first day I was a town manager, I wasn't very good at that either. Some ways I never have been, but it's but it's one of those things where like you got to do it.
The first version of the model kind of sucked. It
Yeah.
was the early drafts were really bad.
They were.
It was like one sheet and it was like just Class B, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I need to do Class C too, don't I? This is because they're gonna play those teams.
The only thing that was keeping me alive was strength of schedule on your
Yeah.
on the bar.
That strength of schedule, yeah, your strength of schedule was rough.
I mean,
But also you had,
yeah.
were one for a while.
Yeah, and that's why like everyone around in the Camden area is like, oh, we're going to Double A or whatever. We're basically playing the biggest schools now, which has never been. Obviously traditional Class B school,
Mm-hmm.
the East. For those of us who are old enough to East West.
Oh yeah.
But when you play I think overall it ended up being 7th at the end of the year. 7th.
That sounds something like that.
Something like that, yeah. But number one most of the time. And that's the thing. You play all A schedule, and then you play the only B teams are Oceanside and Madomic, who guess what, folks? They're pretty good.
They were pretty good.
And that's going to be true next year. Yeah. Madomic graduates a bunch of guys who had great careers, but you know what? I think the
They're gonna reload.
Oceanside knows what they're doing. They're going to be good again, and so I don't worry about that in terms of there is really good basketball in the Mid Coast. Lincoln, Belfast is on the rise. Mount View,
DePatsy's
you
never
know,
won fewer than 10 games
yeah,
at
exactly.
Madomic. I forget the Georges Valley numbers, but he's never won fewer than 10 games, even the year there was only a 12-game schedule.
And I believe I can't imagine he won single digits at Georges Valley too. You know,
Yeah, like maybe
I'm
his
sure
first year.
they had a lot of great athletes over there too, and playing a Class C schedule. You know,
Yeah.
but no, it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be weird to see a C or an A South that is like that's a gauntlet.
That's going
I
to be
mean,
loaded. Yeah.
that is an absolute gauntlet. But oddly enough, on the girls' side, A North is going to be a gauntlet because both finalists, the state finalists, are going to be in A North, plus
Mm-hmm.
our girls who were in the double overtime that lost to Hamden. So it's
3 regional champions in A South for girls.
right, right. And Biddeford is moving up to A.
Biddeford will be back in A.
They'll be back
I'm
in A.
pretty sure. Yeah,
So,
I think there would be a riot if there wasn't.
I mean, it's yeah. I mean, it's going to be really interesting. And I have a second one though. I know we're running on time, but
Okay.
I have a second one, a second wish.
Okay.
Bring back broadcasting, and I know this is impossible, but I'm going to wave my magic wand about this.
Sure.
Bring back broadcasting of the A games. So here's the problem, right? We've done
Mm-hmm.
this where we've got five classes still, but we've taken some of the, if you arguably say the stronger teams are the bigger classes.
Right.
Let's argue that's true generally. Make the give back to those teams is we're going to give you visibility in share for the fact we're going to put you in the same division. So
So
instead
put it
of
on TV, you're saying?
instead of 2 goal balls for A and double A, keep it just as it is, but put them on TV. Put the quarterfinals on TV. So I haven't seen anything about scheduling, and I'm really interested to see how the schedule works between the
Schedule's
different.
going to be something.
Yeah.
Well, the
If you
trick with
could,
that
yeah,
would be, I like it. The trick with that is you would have like the first session would be like A South, and then the next session would be B South. And so then WHOU's got to get in there and get
but
all their
what?
stuff in there.
So remember, and this is okay. I'm painting I'm coloring my age here.
Mm-hmm.
But did you get WABI as a kid out of Bangor, Channel 5?
Yes, sometimes,
Okay. So,
depending on the wind.
right. See, this is what people, you don't understand us mid coast people. We're a little different.
We're right in the middle. Sometimes we
don't
can get that
know
channel. Yeah.
which way the wind blows. Yeah, no, it's true though, right? So ABI would show the Class A games, boys and girls, because remember they happened the next week. So
Right.
they weren't on the February vacation.
Oh,
They
so
were
you're saying do them the next week like the old days.
yes.
I've heard an inverse idea from an actual MPA person that there's been discussion, and I don't know how far down this has gone, of just maybe just discussion of 2 people in line for nachos. What if they do the D tournament a week early, the under 100s, and
See,
give them the spotlight?
I don't want to denigrate the D schools or U100 or whatever we're calling that.
Yeah.
But to me, what you want to do is show one, you're going to get a lot bigger gate if you sell out to A schools, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they're on their own thing, the gate is going to be better. 2, what better way to bring the attention to the whole thing than to have on TV?
Yeah.
Yeah, TV. That's how old I am. But have it on TV to be able to watch, because I can picture. I'm sure there's a lot of old timers like me out there that are like, I remember watching the Lane girls from Coney, and I remember watching Cindy Blodgett, and I remember watching, all those teams, those A teams, Stearns, and it was appointment watching. It was like our own NCAA tournament for a
Mm-hmm.
couple days, boys then girls or whatever, and then they go off into regionals or whatever. But it was like a mini NCAA tournament that was just based right here.
Yeah.
And I don't know if how it works with the networks anymore. And again, that was the 80s and 90s. But part of the visibility of someone like a Cindy Blodgett was because all of us watched all of her tournament games.
Yeah.
All of us sort of bought into that. So there's
It
a
might be
way
a main public issue.
it could be a main public issue. But what I don't understand is, and this is the like part of the issue I remember with main public was they said they couldn't do it anymore because they couldn't find the staff, I think, was to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But why can we with WHOU or NFHS,
Find the
we
staff.
we got a handful of cameras at the center at Augusta and a couple laptops and away we go. I
Right.
know Steve Carmichael and company and all those guys, Cole Purvis, all those guys could probably answer this better than me, but it just feels like the technology has moved to a point where we can do something to at least broadcast and get it out.
Well, the thing, without knowing all the tech stuff, when main public does the state games, they've got 5 or 6 cameras. They've got a production truck.
Sure.
It's a lot more moving pieces than Ethan Snow
Yes.
running some wires and hooking up a couple laptops and doing his thing, or even worse, NFHS, where they're just like, let's just throw up a webcam and call it a day. I know that's a lot more moving parts, so it might be a question of, like, let's say main public has 20 people on the broadcast working, and WHOU has 5.
Yeah.
And so finding that extra staff, I mean, that's not a small difference.
No, I guess my point is that what WHOU does more than enough to me, and then some. Like they're killing it over there, and I have eternal respect. Give me that on,
and simulcast that on main public.
Yeah, or CW or whoever. I don't, something that over the air that anybody in the state of Maine can tune into, and I think what's lost. I mean, the same thing that happens in the NCAA tournament it could happen in Maine, and I think it could happen in other classes too. I'm just saying. I think the A tournament is the one that's the easiest to sell.
Sure.
So that's my magic wand, my second magic wand issue that I think if they could do it, and I know that there's the contracts with NFHS that last forever, and there's someone's left arm was sold to make sure. I mean, I know it's a whole contractual thing. I get it, but it's I'm just saying the number of times I say to people, and I'm like, okay, well, the game, and they're like, okay, well, how do I watch that? Okay. So what you do is...
Did you notice the difference in the thing they added to the schedule this year? Where they had, the PDF schedule that they come out for each site? Yeah. If you went to it this year during the tournament, there was, in each game, there was a link to the stream of that game, to where it was streaming, and there was a link to the live stats page on my site where you could go to the live stats and see what are the 3 games that are happening at the moment. So I mean, that even doing that is such a big change.
And live stats, I'm so glad they went in with you on that. We've got to somehow figure it. I could not get it to upload as quickly as I would have liked. When I was doing
that's because it's a $5 app.
I know, but look, baby steps here.
Yeah,
this is like, hey, whatever it is, it's fantastic. I was using it when I was doing the games on Frank. Hugely helpful. So thank you.
Awesome.
On behalf of all of us who are doing these things, thank you, Lucas. And
I had that Camden girls game against Lawrence up. I had the stats up at first, and I had so many people looking over my shoulder going, wait, they're running by how much? Really?
It was crazy. It was crazy.
And then we just had WHOU up once the game ended.
That was, I obviously I spend more time on the boys' side just because I've got boys and that's where we are. But that Camden Hills girls program has really taken a step. Yeah. Coach Bragg is doing great, and again, youth program. It's boys and girls, same idea. Coach Cronkite was part of that, and we've been going and building. But they're gonna be in the mix next year. They got to the final. Harbor House played Lawrence. This time it went to Lawrence, but it was it was close, and
Well, you got the
so
one that mattered.
you always wanted to have that one, right? You want
the
the
one
one
to
on
get.
the right leg to Augusta, yeah. But we got a growing program, and Maddie Provost is a real customer. And we're talking about Miss Basketball.
I think
She's
that's Miss
done it.
Basketball.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's a wrap.
She's pretty good.
She's got the gold ball, and she was like the second best player on that team as a freshman. So I think it was kind of a wrap then.
There are a lot of, and there are a lot of. I mean, that's a program. Again, talking about these programs, right? That yes, you have a Maddie Provost who pops, but you've got a lot of talented players in that Lawrence team. I've got to shout out Fialauka, our sophomore, because I think she's someone who, if they're not watching her around the state, that is a girl who really is going to be an impactful star across this state next year.
Oh yeah.
And, a lot of people don't know her. I know you've seen her a number of times, but Thea was for a sophomore, and what she was doing was doing some really amazing stuff, handling, defending, shooting, driving, like just the total package. And,
she was impressive for a sophomore, definitely.
Yeah, so we're just cranking them out over here. These great basketball players.
Falmouth of the North. That's what I always say.
Next,
Falmouth of the North.
Oh, thanks.
I told the Falmouth guys they were the Camden of the South, so it's both ways.
I'm sure they love that. Yeah.
They were thrilled.
It's there is a collection of us that everyone hates, and we know it, and it's okay.
Just gotta go with it. Embrace your inner Dale Landreth, and just revel in it. Just play the villain.
Dale, but not ironically, Dale is the one who does a lot of our screen printing and our work now. So he's still supporting Cameron Hills through and through. So thank you, Dale, at Adventure Advertising.
He screen printed my thing that I wear. My quarter zip.
Yeah, it looks good. Looks sharp.
There you go. Yeah.
So we've all grown past those prior days of,
I mean, a little.
A little.
Mostly. I did tell the MPA guys, I was like, I know that you put everybody on the higher seeds always on the same side at the expo, but I would recommend not putting Oceanside and Madomic on the same side.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, they'll be fine. They get along. I'm like, no, they won't. They will not get along. You can put Lincoln and Madomic on the same side because they share a Hannaford. And so they have to get along. If you put Oceanside and Madomic on the same side, potential for it to not go well.
Yeah. No, I would co-sign that.
Yeah, they dodged a bullet.
I think pretty much. I think you could put Camden and Madomic on the same side. Usually.
Yeah, I think so.
Usually,
yeah.
I think if you were back in the mid '90s in those Landreth, Josh Nash days, that would have been a bad idea. There was
not have gone well.
A lot of dislike, mutual dislike. I think Oceanside has been the big dog around here lately. They've obviously had a really good run here the last 4 or 5 years. And so on the boys and girls side. And so, I think that's where that is. But, if Camden runs off 5, 6, 7 years in a row,
it would get ugly.
Everyone would be back to hating us again. So
yeah. But, and people get freaked out about that stuff. And I think it's great. I think there should be a like the Looney Tunes cartoons with the wolf and the sheep herder and whatever, you punch the clock. And then you fight, and then you punch out, and you're like, let's go to the bar.
I think we're there. Yeah, I think so. I mean, look at us. Just a couple rivals here, a couple towns away.
Some good-natured.
That's right.
Hatred.
But it's true everywhere. I mean, this happens, right? All across the state. There are these rivalries. And I think they are good. I think they're good for everybody. And it sharpens your game. I mean, you're right. Locally, when you're at the youth level and you're just, I know that kid, and this and that and the other. but it does. It makes you all want to raise your game. Well, Oceanside's doing this, but we got to do this. And Madomic's doing that. And, like Madomic bought the suits for their kids that we bought for our boys and girls the year before. And I'm like, oh, okay, I see how it is.
Uh-huh.
Time to buy a scoreboard then, I guess. So
do need a new scoreboard.
You do need a new scoreboard.
It's in rough shape.
Anyone who doesn't know, anytime the buzzer goes off at Madomic, it's like a rave over there. Just all the lights start popping and going crazy.
They all go off, and you're just like, "What's the score now?" Okay, right. And then it comes back, and you're like, "Okay."
Every time, so like it's buzzing to someone sending in the game, buzzing to like timeout. A minute to go, and all of it. Just it's a little nuts, but
it's a little. I think that's the same scoreboard from like the '80s. I think it's been there since the 80s.
So the one that we just replaced, the Cannon Hills Boosters replaced, that was original to the school. So that was 25 years old. And it had enough dents in it because we used to have baseball practice in the gym, and that's all gone now. So,
geez. I think that might have been Art Dyer's scoreboard for all I know.
Art Dyer's. That's when they won the last championship. That scoreboard was up.
What's up, Reese? Reese is back.
Reese is back.
50.
Huh?
I gotta go to bed.
You gotta go to bed? Okay. We'll sign off. Thank you for doing this, John. It's bedtime. And let me find the thing and read it out. All right. This has been a production of MaineBasketballRankings.com. You want to get in here, Reese?
Yeah,
your source for the most comprehensive coverage of Maine high school basketball from Ashland to York and everywhere in between. This podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts and a bunch of places you don't. If you enjoy this, please leave a nice review because it really does help out with algorithms. Tell your friends. Tell your enemies. Thanks for listening.